We're starting up. I am so happy to be here with the talented Brooke Baldwin, who I have admired her journalism for so long. She was a longtime anchor at CNN. Her book, Huddle, is a fantastic book about women working together. Um, and I also loved The Trust on Netflix. So,
Oh, that was so fun. It was so fun. It was like 20 plus years of, hard journalism. And it was like this perfect amuse-bouche when Netflix called and they were like, do you want to do a reality show? And I was like, what? But it was so fun. It was so fun. Kate, it's so nice to see you also because we used to do TV together. And I remember I used to ask you to like send all of your books, not just to me, but to my mother, who loves reading every single thing you write. No,
oh,
no,
I'm
no.
so glad she loves. So, First Ladies is my kind of expertise, but it's gotten hard. It's gotten hard.
Elizabeth Taylor, like she ate it all up.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. Thank
Yeah.
you. And so you were one of the first people on my list about talking to about this subject because
Mm.
How She Led to Me is about women who have inspired Washingtonians or Washington adjacent journalists, historians.
Yeah.
Um, and I think Unraveling is such a great, honest Substack that you do. And your
Thank you.
writing is so honest. And I
Thank
just think
you.
a
Thank you.
rare person who can bear themselves in such a way. Um,
It's after so many years of, I know we're gonna get to my
yes,
woman in a
please.
second, but it's like, after so many years of, and I still am, and I forever will be. Maria Shriver was like, Brooke, you were always a journalist, whether you have the three letters by your name or not. But like, it's so beautiful. And this is, anyone can do it. Like anyone can jump on
Yeah.
Substack. I mean, I've just basically been journaling, like, I imagine like you for years and years and years. And it's just like a public journal. And it is so liberating. It does take bravery. And I do have sometimes, like, what is it Brene Brown calls like vulnerability hangovers, but
Yeah.
we're all walking the walk together. So thank you for
Yeah.
saying that.
Well, I think it's therapy for everybody to feel like they can. You had something recently about waking up angry, and I know that it's like this feeling that a lot of women share. A
Yes.
lot of people, but the feeling of just powerlessness, and I think you've tapped into something big. So I guess my first question kind of complements that is who is the person in your life, the woman in your life who's helped you be so vulnerable, like to feel comfortable that you can share these things.
We were chatting before we came on, and there's so many women. I mean, I wrote a book about the collective power of women. Obviously, I was raised by a woman, and I was like, should I choose my mom? Because a lot of actually how like my mom is how I'm not. But I choose Oprah Winfrey. Oprah. Oprah's my person. And in fact, I brought photos because this is the first time I met her. This is the first time I met her. This was just shy of the pandemic when she was running around the country doing these like filling arenas. And I actually have like multiple photos because, I'd never met her before, and I'll tell you why I'm picking her, but I'd never met her. And I, through Gail King, thank you, Gail, I got like a VIP pass to be backstage just to like, share the same oxygen. I didn't think I'd meet her. And then I met her. And not only, Kate, did I meet her, but somebody on her team shouts, "That's CNN's Brooke Baldwin." And Oprah, like, because she's like, it's like one after the next after the next. And she looks at me and she was like, "Ah!" And
Oh,
we had a moment, and I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. Oprah's my person.
oh my God, she is an icon, right? There's
Icon.
nobody as famous in the
Yeah.
entire world. Is there anything that she said or, done that makes you feel like it's propelled you forward?
I think it's funny. I remember I wrote a line in my book, Huddle, something like, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I grew up in the age of Oprah. And then I was like, no, wait, we're all still living in the age of Oprah. And I think having someone like Oprah, on TV in the background as I was growing up, like I remember my mom watching like Sally Jesse Raphael and Phil Donahue and Oprah. And it was sort of the first time as a little girl that I really like, I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be an Olympic gymnast till I realized I'd be 5'10". I wanted to be all these things. And then I think it was something about almost like having Oprah on in the background inceptioned me into seeing, oh wow, a black woman in Chicago who's, doing everything from inviting, I think what I love so much early on about Oprah is that she talked to everyone. And the way I mean, to me, I think one of my Jedi powers is the way I listen and the way I interview people. And when I look at someone like Oprah, these days on cable news, it's a lot of food fighting. It's a lot of like who can dunk on whom, who, interrupting back and forth, which clip is going to go viral. That's not my jam. In the end, like that wasn't my currency. That wasn't what I was good at. And God bless, like, the Caitlin Collins of the world who are like brilliant at that kind of thing. But my skill set is something different. And the way Oprah would bring on almost anyone onto her show and give them a platform and get curious. Like, I think that I could go off on a whole tangent about America right now. And I feel like this is like lost art of listening and having an open aperture to who we are. We're so like siloed and we're fed our own algorithms and, we're in these echo chambers. And I really admire how and I just believe this is who she is because of her upbringing, and how we have like sympathy for her, given like who she was as a child, her origin story into this extraordinary human today. Really like planted seeds for me early on as to the woman and the broadcaster and the interviewer and the listener I would want to become.
Mm-hmm. I saw you talk recently in Unraveling about the Pulse nightclub shooting and
Oh
how
my
you
gosh.
connected.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that Oprah did so well, right? And she still does today. Like you said, she's still doing these amazing interviews and getting people to talk. I always wonder in those situations, like how do you not get so overcome with emotion yourself when you're interviewing somebody who's been through something?
I became at CNN, if people watching aren't as familiar with me, I became like the school shooting anchor and the mass shooting person and the terror attack person. And I think it's because I do have empathy. I do have compassion. I know how, like, the way I would talk to President Obama when I met him would, with the same amount of respect, is exactly how I would talk to an auto worker I would have interviewed, in Michigan back in the day, or even, someone who survived a mass shooting.
I love that. Yeah.
And I think I just am who I am. Like sometimes you meet people and they're different off camera versus on, and I am who you get, 360 degrees. And I think it's impossible for me not to, I remember weeping with members of Congress in Parkland, Florida, covering that story. You referenced the Pulse nightclub shooting when all those people were murdered. I think I posted it because it was 10 years and I've still stayed in touch with this woman who lost several friends who was there that night. And how could I not? At the end of that interview, when you lock eyes with someone and they bare their soul and their loss, how do you not? I don't care if you're on TV or not, open your arms to them and hold them. And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah. You're very good at that. It feels very real because it is real.
It is.
You mentioned a little bit, and not to get too into anything you don't want to talk
Yeah.
about, but you said you're very different from your mom. And I'm curious, like how, because I think we've all seen our moms, a different generation. I'm 45. I think we're about the same age.
About to turn 47.
Okay.
Yep.
And our moms grew up at a time when women, I'll sometimes complain to my mom, like I feel so overwhelmed. And she just says, well, life isn't fair. And she says it in a very like, it sucks, but this is the way it is. You're from the South, right? Was your mom raised in that?
From the South, my mom, listen, and I love my mom and I have so much gratitude to my mom, but I think sometimes, mother-daughter relationships can be deeply complicated. And I think because my mom was one of 5 girls, daughter of a Presbyterian minister and a beauty queen, and, didn't come from much. They moved around depending on which church my granddaddy was preaching at, down south. And, you know, she always would have to, had hand-me-downs and, you know, was adorable and effervescent. And then something happened that changed her life, that actually happened with one of her sisters, and it changed the course of my mom's life. And I can't get into it, but the net is when she went off to Agnes Scott, an all-girls college in Atlanta, she had the bejesus scared out of her by her parents to be a good girl. And in doing so, you know, she ended up meeting and marrying my dad, who she stayed with for 40 years until she finally found the strength to leave him. And it's very much part of my story growing up, knowing, like, having this spidey sense at a very young age that my mom was not living, that my mom wasn't her full self. You know, I mean, she you know, had her master's, like, she's brilliant. She's the kind of person you go into the Louvre and she'd be correcting the tour guide. You know what I mean? Like, she knows her history and her art and everything else, but like, she allowed for her world to become small. And I would look at her as a little girl and growing into adolescence, knowing something wasn't entirely right. And I think, you know, sometimes, like, when we talk about patterns, like, we either become our parents or we do you know, we try to run 180 degrees the opposite direction. Neither, I don't know, is correct or not correct. But I think my mom showed me what I didn't want to become in terms of not having a voice, staying small, feeling stuck. And I'm proud of her. You know, I say to her now, like, all these years later, how still I was like 30 something at the time when she finally left my father. And that meant something to me, you know, that she was able to do that. And then watching the way she lives now, and she reads my Substack, Kate. Like, sometimes she'll read parts of my Substack that I don't even know she's reading. And she'll reference things that I'm even like, I'm turning, like, you know, bright red that my mom is reading these things. And she's like, Brooke, me too now. Me too, you know. So I love that.
Me
I love
too.
that.
She's evolved, right?
She's evolved.
Yes. And that's the story that I mean, and that's not an uncommon thing, right? Women of that generation, it's really hard to
White picket fences, brush it under the rug, keep the secrets. Did you have a similar, like?
Yeah. Oh, my mom is like a big feminist, and but she wanted to do more, and her kind of blue collar family in Northern California didn't want her to go to Berkeley, and didn't want, so she at a gas station to pay her tuition. And I think it was in like,
Oh, you say that. Yeah.
Yeah. And her dad was from the Bronx and was like, what do you don't need a degree like that. What are you going to do with it? And she went on to become a banker and did a lot of cool stuff. So, and now she's just amazing. But I think there is like a limit to the feminism of that time where, you know, we are all a little bit like stuck in an age where we haven't had a woman president. We haven't had a woman at the very top, and women still have so much trouble. And I wrote a book with Nora O'Donnell called We the.
Congratulations.
Thank
I
you.
saw Nora at the Gracies last year, and she was like previewing it. And when I saw that y'all were doing it together, congratulations.
She's so cool. Thank you. And she's really like you. She supports other women, has been awesome about that. And she was like, you know, I think sometimes women kind of can be each other's worst enemy in some way, because there's like a limited, you feel like there's a limited seat, you know, there are only so many chairs. And I'm wondering if, like, in your career, you experienced that, and if there's anybody, any mentor or anybody, because there are different phases of life and your career, right? People who said, you know what, Brooke, like, you should do this. This interview is perfect for you. A woman who said that to you.
A woman. I'm like, immediately my mind goes to this like fabulous gay man who altered the course of my career. A woman. I'm thinking, let's see, I graduated Chapel Hill. I worked in Charlottesville. I mean, there was you know, coming out of Chapel Hill and living in Charlottesville, Virginia, I learned very early on, because I am like you, like, I'm a woman's woman. It's literally the biggest compliment you can give me. I wrote the book called Huddle, how to, you know, how we unlock collective power. It's like, I rising tide lifts, like I live that. And so when I come across a woman, and I obviously we all have, and especially in TV, in such a cutthroat industry, when people are one way over here and then like have sharp elbows and want to jab you and take you down, you know. So I experienced plenty of that, but there was this Stephanie Cornwell, like I was a 22-year-old, you know, reporter in Charlottesville, just like getting my sea legs under me, you know, and doing live shots and telling stories and covering court cases and water skiing squirrels and everything in between. And she had gone on and she worked in Nashville, you know, she'd been a TV anchor in Nashville, like the big city. And so she like came back to this small town of Charlottesville to be the main 6 p.m. anchor. And I thought she was so cool. And she saw in me. And she saw that talent where other women around me would be threatened by my whole package, you know, even though I am like a lovely human, it doesn't matter. And she just was like, come over here, girlfriend, like, let me come over here, grasshopper. Let me show you, let me tell you. And so from there, I always was able to find, like, it was Stephanie in Charlottesville. And then I moved on and I lived in Charleston, Huntington, West Virginia for 3 years in my 20s. Like running through there was the director of our morning show was this woman, Darla, because most of the other women, like, you know, you would look at me and it was like, oh, she's not sticking around. Like, this girl is like going to do her time and she's out. And then I experienced more supportive women in Washington and then ultimately at CNN. My God, I mean, you know, I came to CNN in 2008, right at the time when the economy went kerplunk and all these promises had been made to me. And I show up like, you know, leaving this perfectly good job in Washington, moving into my childhood bedroom at the precipice of my parents, you know, splitting up, surrounded by like, you know, it's like as though 1997 still exists in my home when I graduated high school. You know, and I show up to CNN like, okay, guys, I'm ready to go. And they were like, nope, just kidding. Like, we've frozen all the positions. Like, sorry about that. And like, God. I end up basically, Kate, you know, charming the Southeast Bureau Chief, Mary Lynn Ryan. Like, I'm squatting in an office. I am showing up somehow. Like, the security guards were like, come on in, Brooke, you know, like, I had the yellow badge and it was Mary Lynn who was like, okay, like, she didn't kick me out of the building. And just each and every day, like, I'd show up and I wouldn't get paid and I wouldn't get paid. And I would just like try to figure out like what story I could turn to get on TV for that month. And eventually, like, I literally put my name on a Post-it outside my office as like, that was my like claiming my space. And I remember Mary Lynn's assistant like actually got me a nameplate. I mean, I wasn't hired, you know, but these are the things that women do, and I'll never forget it. And that was, I could keep going, but
I didn't know you had a Post-it note that you put as
Girl,
your name.
I had a Post-it note and was squatting in an office and should have been kicked out of that building for 2 years. What? They didn't put a ring on it for 2 years. CNN didn't. They were just, and by then they had me like, it was crazy. I mean, I was like filling in anchoring on shows. I was running around the country as a freelance correspondent, but they had me like, I came cheap and I was willing to work. And it actually took, Fox News Channel called me up and Roger Ailes was like, we want you to be the next generation of Fox News Channel. And I was like, oh, okay. So I go back to CNN and I was like, you know, I could have like a show over here. And they're like, okay, we'll put a ring on it, make you a correspondent. You can be on TV for 2 minutes a day. And that's what I took. I wanted to be at CNN.
Aren't you so glad you didn't do the Fox job now that
I am, but of course my mother was like, are you sure you don't want to be on Fox? You know, I grew up in that kind of house. So like my mom would like, eventually I had my own show and she'd like watch the other guys. Then she would turn it on CNN. Then she would turn it back.
You remind me a little of one of my really good friends who's from Mississippi, and she's beautiful. And when I first met her, I was working at Fox as a booker, and I remember she came in and she went to Ole Miss, and she was like, we had a rotating group of like gorgeous blonde women coming in. And she came in and I was just like, oh my God, another one of these girls. She's going to know nothing. And she actually wrote a note and left it on my computer. And she said, I hope you can be open to me. I would love to be your friend. And it was like the
Oh,
sweetest thing ever. And we've stayed friends for like 20 years. And she's smart and she's funny
yes.
and she's not like that. But I think
Yeah.
judging a book by its cover,
Yes.
like
So easy.
we do it for everyone. And
That-
and I think that like when you see somebody like your point about you came in, and I think there were probably some women there who thought she's trying to take my job. And you
Yeah.
can't blame them because that does happen.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Because of the
where
scarcity mentality, because it's a male dominated profession. Like, of course, I understand. And also,
and also one final thing I want to ask you about, because I know you love Diane Furstenberg and I
oh,
do. Is she one of the women on your list? And like, how did you meet her? And I
oh my
just need
gosh.
to know.
I'm so glad you brought up DVF. I met DVF. Okay. So my mom, who was a high school teacher back in the day, really had nothing. This, as the story goes, my mom would, I shouldn't say this, but would like sneak wear her roommate's DVF wrap dresses and then like put them back in her closet when they were like in their young 20s because my mom couldn't afford them. Cut to, I'm in Charlottesville or West Virginia, and my mom sends me my very first DVF wrap dress, and I, Kate, still have it in my closet. Still have it. It means so much to me. And so then cut to, from like the early 2000s to I get to CNN, then I moved to New York in 2014, and somewhere in there I interview DVF, and then I interview her a few times. Then I create this women's series called American Woman. And I'm like, I call her DVF to her face. I'm like, DVF, you have to, will you please, be part of this? And she ends up hosting the whole, premiere party in her flagship store in Meatpacking District. And then I just kind of, I just kind of keep buzzing around her. Like when I leave CNN, it was her home in Connecticut that I went to like 2 days later when I was gutted, and she's like, she's tough, she's fierce, she's in charge, she's sexy AF at, she's just shy of 80. How old is she?
So good.
Anyway, so periodically I will just hang out with her in her, she has a place in New York, and she laughs that it's often like therapy sessions, and I just trust her, and she's so wise. And so I was just in Venice, and I'd been in her office like 2 months ago, and she handed me this book that she'd written about how Venice is a woman. And so DVF has been this real presence for me these last 2 weeks as I've been in Venice on my own solo travel. And she is just everything you want her to be, everything you hope she is, and more.
She sounds amazing. I think her house, so I grew up in Washington, Connecticut. I think that's like near her. Is that where her house is? Buried
I
Dillard?
can't remember the name of the town. The
Like
home is
Kent
called
or something?
Cloud Walk. It's
Yeah.
Washington, Connecticut.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like middle of
Yes.
nowhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Middle of nowhere. Middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
But
I'm going
beautiful.
there today. It is beautiful.
Oh,
Yeah, my parents still live there. It's gorgeous. But she is like such an incredible icon. And did she
yes.
give you, I'll close it out because I need to know, did she give you any advice about how to like bury your soul in the way that you're doing it without giving too, like I feel like there's a level where you don't want to go too deep, right? Where you want to keep some things to yourself. And I'm wondering, like, I think you're doing an amazing job of that.
I know she subscribes to my Substack. She doesn't really give me work advice. It's more like life advice. Like every time I see her, the first question out of her mouth is like, are you having sex? How's your love life? Like that's what it is, or I go in and talk about, okay, I've just split after a couple years from this person. Tell me why, she's not she's not going to throw her arm around you and like wipe your tears. She's like tough love, in the best possible way. She just, and I appreciate that. She is a woman who knows exactly who she is. She always says the most important relationship you have is the relationship you have with yourself. And she is exactly the kind of woman I aspire to be. Yeah.
Well, Thank you so much for sharing this time. I knew you would be like an amazing person to talk to about this because
Thank you for asking me. I missed you, and
I'm
congratulations on your
following
book.
you. Oh, thank you. And I'm cheering you on, and I love
Thank
your
you.
your Substack and your
Thank
books.
you.
And are you working on a new book?
I feel like as I write my Substack every week, I'm writing bits and pieces of it. I have a whole idea I want to parachute into America and be on the road and talk about sort of America's unraveling. And I have a feeling that like my next book will be some sort of intersection between my own personal story and those that I get around the country at this wild time in which we live.
We are unraveling indeed.
We are.
All right. Thanks so much, Brooke.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.